This is Just Common Sense, a common sense approach to life with Dr. Johnny Hunter.
That's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home.
Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome everyone once again to Just Common Sense, taken from Proverbs 2:7.
He grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. He is a shield to those who walk with integrity.
Oh, thank you, Tahir. And as you can see, I have our protege right here in the studio with us today. And we're recording at a very tough time. And meanwhile, my sweetheart is out taking care of elections on the day of the recording of this particular episode. Now, what we do want to talk about today is that you need to know the season and the spiritual ramifications of it. And remember that scripture that we read every time for this program, he grants a treasure of common sense. That common sense in most translation is the word wisdom. And if you have common sense, you are being very wise. Now, today's episode, I want to thank you out there for listening. And I want to thank you for those of you who are tuning in to WCLE and Christian 105.7 FM. And I always remind you, if you're in a car and you get home before the program is over, but you want to hear the rest of it, it's going to be there. It will be on the WCLE and Christian 105.7 FM website under their podcast. Now, there's a thing that people need to realize. I'm going to be talking scripture before we hit our little headlines today, because the headlines by this day on Thursday here, you already know what the headlines are. And the current situation is that we need you to know the present season. And the Ecclesiastes 9:17 and 18 talked about a time that, a major army came against this little city. And this city was able to be saved by a wise man, an old wise man, but nobody remembers his name. But in Ecclesiastes 9:17, it says this: the words of wise men are heard in quiet, more than the cry of him that ruleth over fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroyeth much good. And this is very key to remember, because when you're getting ready to step into a war, you have to be sure that wisdom is with you. Wisdom is better than any weapon you can ever have. But all it takes is one sinner to mess everything up, it says. And the reason you end up in war, there's some wonderful scriptures about it, why it's there. But I guarantee you, it's because somebody got so much hate and sin on them that they set the situation up to start things. But we'll get into that as we go. Now, Ecclesiastes 3:1-8, why I say you need to know the season, because this part of the scriptures says something that we may not like, but we've heard it so many times before, and it is so true.
I'll read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1-8. This is very important, especially when we're speaking of seasons and knowing the time and seasons that we're in. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. Verse 5, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away. Verse 7, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And the last verse, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace.
And now what you have to determine is what season are we in? And when you go through every one of these, we don't have time to go through this one because we could make the whole next week program. I mean, we could do a whole program on just that the whole little chapter you read, those verses there, all to themselves, and many ministers and pastors do. But there's a couple of things that it says in here. There's a time to kill and there's a time to heal. But you got to know when one is the right one and which is the right one and when you shouldn't. Like if a police officer's out there and somebody draws a gun on them and starts shooting up a bunch of people, like this fella down in Austin started doing, and the police showed up and that person's still killing folks, it's turned into a time to kill. Not the innocent folks, but to take out that sniper, the one that's killing everybody else.
Yes.
And a time to heal. Every doctor knows about this one. That's why you have doctors, because there's going to be a time that you really want to make sure that everybody get well. I'm just putting that, just making it on the minor side of things. There's a time to weep. We know when somebody pass away, and there's going to be a time to laugh. Even at a funeral service, if you go to it, there are moments that laughter is fine because you're remembering something wonderful about the person who's passed on. When it talks about a time to get and a time to lose, there's a time to win things, there's a time to lose. And every grandparent would even tell you, you might play a little game, you're teaching your little grandchild first what time to play the game. And you might just let them win. And when you do that, you do it. You lose. But that was a time for you to lose so that person could learn. Time to keep cast away. But we get to that last one. There's a time to love and a time to hate. And a lot of people don't realize you better be careful what it is you're hating and why you're hating. Because there's a time for it. There's a time for war and a time for peace. And right now, folks, we've hit that time where we're not at the peace part at all. So now you have an idea physically what season we're in. Now, Daniel had a situation come up. And Daniel had this king to come before him. Well, Daniel found out the king had put out an order to kill all the wise men because the king had a dream. And when he had that dream, he wanted somebody to interpret the dream, shook him up so bad he needed somebody to interpret it. So he called his wise men together. He was saying, tell me the interpretation of this dream I had last night. They said, okay, what is the dream? He said, I don't remember. And the mere fact he said, I can't remember, they were going, wait a minute, how can we tell you what the dream means if you don't even remember it?
You don't remember yourself.
Yes. And they were in a quandary because they were saying, wait a minute, this is way too, this is something that only a God could do or something. They were perturbed. And that king, he found out these people ain't as wise as they think they are, as far as he was concerned. So he ordered all the wise men to be put to death. And he sent them out there to start killing the wise people. And so naturally they headed over to Daniel. Over to Daniel, Mishael, and Azariah, and Hananiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They headed over to them. And in Daniel, in this chapter, it starts verse 16, he said, Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time. Because when he heard they would get ready to kill him, he said, whoa. He talked to the head honcho and said, wait a minute, God, you got to take me to the king here. We need to get some more time. Went to his house and made a decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they may seek mercies from God of heaven concerning this secret, so Daniel and his companion might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Scriptures say a threefold cord It's tough to break. You need friends. You need companions. And Daniel did the right thing. He got him some brothers that he went to that knew how to pray right with him.
Yes.
And the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. And this is what Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who are understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you." Now I tell you, with God saved my life, I'll be saying the same thing. "O God of my fathers, you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand." Daniel had the exact same dream that the king had. Now, what is interesting, he knew he had the exact same dream.
Yes, he did.
But not only did he know it, but he actually knew what the dream meant. And that's why he was giving God so much praises. But in the midst of it, just today, I just want to concentrate on one part. He said he changed the times and the seasons. He removed kings and raises up kings. And a lot of people we're living in today, especially I have found here in the United States of America, you want to find out where people really are standing? All you got to do is just say the name Trump. And you can see people, oh my goodness, people split. I mean,
Yes.
they can. And people have to remember something about David. He did not particularly like Saul, but he honored Saul as the king. And he honored Saul as the king, even though Saul was about as wrong as he be, because Saul was out to kill David.
He was. And every opportunity he had, he tried to take David out.
And even when David had the opportunity to do it, he did not do it.
He did not.
He did not do it. He said, because that was God's anointed. Now, David is saying something there. See, I'm one of these people in my earlier walks in Christian life. I was thinking, wait a minute, God don't put in no bad kings. Until you start reading the scriptures and you find out that what Daniel wrote there is true. He removes kings. He raises up kings. So in 1 Kings 19, in this 15 through 17, we're jumping right into the life of Elijah. This is after Elijah hid out in a cave, and everything. And he had done some wonderful things. And of course, the enemy was after him big time, especially Jezebel. He hid out in the cave. He thought he was the only one out there. And God let him know, he got many out there not bowed their knees to Baal. And the Lord said to him, "Go return your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. And also you shall anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat, and Abel Mahalat, you shall anoint as prophet in your place." Now, for those of you who know just a little bit of Bible history, he told him who to put as king over the nation that was the enemy of God's people. He said, you put Hazael in as king of Syria. And then he said who to put over Israel, Jehu. But he said also you shall anoint the prophet Elisha in your stead. And God even told him the reason to do it. It shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill. And whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. Now we have to go on into this another time. I'll just leave it right there where it is, because Elijah only did one of those things. He found Elisha, the prophet that would take his place. That's all he did. But when you read the rest of the book, you find out Elisha finished what Elijah started, what Elijah had started. Elisha finished it. He did get those other two kings in position. And the way he did it is a wonderful lesson all to itself. In fact, when he even anointed the king over Syria, he cried and wept. And he was even asked by the king, why are you weeping? He said, because I know what you're going to do. I know the killing that you're going to be doing. So in every situation, God has put leaders in position all across the world. And a lot of times when you see these leaders and you hear them hollering out, God is great, they actually believe it. Now, the trouble is, if we're not careful, we give them a reason to believe they're right. In Matthew 10, this is starting with verse 34. Jesus said most controversial things of all the things he keeps saying all throughout scriptures. Only when you read the full gospel do you understand what he's really saying. Do you not think that I came to bring peace on earth? I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. And that verse right along, standing alone, said, oh my goodness, this means Jesus was all for war. But you have to read the rest of it because he says, for I come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against his mother-in-law, and a man's enemy shall be those of his own household. And when you read the rest of scripture, you find out Jesus is saying anybody that loves somebody else, I don't even care if it's your mother, your father, if you love somebody else more than me, you're in trouble.
Yes, you are.
I mean, and those are some very controversial things. But the mere fact he said, I came not to bring peace, but a sword. In other words, Jesus was letting you know, I am here to find out who's really on God's side.
That's good.
That's what he was really saying. I'm here to find out who's really on God's side. Now, headlines that right now that we're living in. The U.S. Israel launched a major attack on Iran as Trump urges Iranian people to take over the government. It's interesting. The fellow that put out that article on January 22nd, his name was John Solomon. It's called Just the News, taken from Alpha News. The United States and Israel launched a massive area attack Saturday on Iran after negotiations failed to strike a deal over Tehran's nuclear ambitions. And President Donald Trump urged the Iranian people to use the moment to seize control of their government. And what people don't realize is when they hit, and it now just been coming out in the news, that when they were doing negotiations, one thing came out that President Trump and other leaders and the Israel leaders did not like. Iran was planning to strike first. And you can't just keep making threats. Somebody just can't keep walking every time. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to let the death to you. And somebody says that's not smart. Mm-mm. But anyway, they not only hit Iran, they knocked out the head leaders. And then if that wasn't enough, afterwards, Israel did another strike because they had to get another leader. So 40 of the main leaders got together, and the headlines now become Israel strikes Iranian leadership meeting, choosing Khomeini, I can't say his name right, Khomeini successor. More than 40 senior Iranian leaders were killed since Operation Epic Fury began Saturday, fracturing regime's command structure. Israeli forces, and this was reported on March the 3rd, Israel forces struck a meeting of Iran's Supreme Council on Tuesday as officials gathered to choose a successor to the late Ayatollah Ali Khomeini. A senior Israel officials told Fox News. Israel struck while they were counting the votes for the appointment of their supreme leader, the officials said. So they got together, and still the enemy got together and said, oh, well, we definitely got to get another leader. And they got together while they was in the leader, making the leader, more of them were wiped out, the people who choose the leaders themselves. Folks, this is war. Now, right now, we're here in the United States and we're feeling good about it. And I remember walking down the streets some years ago telling Pat, I love over here at the street I live on because it's so nice and quiet. And every now and then in Fort Bragg, you hear a bomb go off and it shakes the city up a little bit. But it was a peaceful street. But one day I was walking and I just had my little vision. And I said, oh my, the street will not always be peaceful. And when I saw it, I did share it with Pat. I said, no need of scaring everybody else because there ain't no need because you don't know when the time and when the season is. Mm. But I did know this. When war hits, Fayetteville is right in the zone. If the enemy hits, that they will hit us too. And that's a reality. Now, God has literally put in a leader like Donald Trump to really address a leader like Khomeini. If God put in those two strong leaders at the same time and one goes down because they realize this is a time one of us is going down, that Iran already said they were going to take Trump out. But Israel had other ideas. Meanwhile, here in our own nation, churchgoers are suing Don Lemon and others over extreme outrageous conduct. This happened in Minnesota. Remember that? When they broke into that church because they were set over the borders for the ICE. And one of the pastors there had some involvement with ICE. And a woman said she experienced severe emotional distress, fear, anxiety, and trauma. And she's probably telling the truth about this one. Because of the group action, she said terrified children and other vulnerable congregants because they went right in to even threaten children and everybody. Mm. And I mean, this was horrible. They have filed, the St. Paul woman has filed a federal civil lawsuit against 8 anti-ICE activists, alleging they conspired to storm cities' churches during the Sunday service. Frightening. And now they are that whole church is involved in this lawsuit, more than just her. And meanwhile, while the lawsuit is going on, screenshots included in the exhibit shows the media promotional media material for the January event, featuring a message urging participants to pull up and oppose ICE. And they found all the information. And now they report that Lemon, along with the rest of the listed defendants, are also being charged criminally by the Department of Justice with violation of the FACE Act and conspiracy against the right of religious freedom at a place of worship. The FACE Act is what they were using to rescue rescuers of babies at an abortion clinic. If you blocked the door, you were hit with that FACE Act. And here now, the very act that the enemy used to bring down pro-life is now being turned against them. Can the church sue? Of course it can. You say, oh no, but we're supposed to love our enemies. Yes, you're supposed to love them. But there's 2 ways to love them. You can kill them with kindness, or you can go ahead and take them on to court. You think you're not supposed to sue your neighbors. And Jesus specifically said, if you go through the scriptures carefully, he said, somebody asked him, who's your neighbor? And he gave that parable, we call it the parable of the Good Samaritan. I said it's a parable of the compassionate Samaritan. And Jesus gave it, said the 3 people, the rabbi passed by, the priest passed by, but the Samaritan stopped to help the man that was wounded in Jericho. He said, who is the neighbor? Because just common sense tells you which one is really neighbor. And the guy realized it's the one that showed mercy. So your neighbor is the one that showed mercy. But if you're dealing with somebody who ain't got no mercy, you're not dealing with your neighbor. And that person can be sued. There's a difference between neighbors and there's a difference between enemies. And you got to know which one it is. And you got to know what season you're in when you start doing these things. Now, the tough part for our nation is something Jesus said in Mark 3:24-26. You want to read that one, Tahi?
If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house is divided against itself, the house cannot stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but has an end.
And here's why we have the season that we have. Because right now, the reason Iran could fall, because it is a nation divided. There are several, you know what Jesus said, because we got to take it, because he was trying to warn the church here. We need to be always stay united. Your family need to always stay united. The kingdom needs to stay, your nation needs to stay united, because once it gets divided, that nation is going to go down. Now, Iran was a divided nation. There's several major sects within Islam. It's called Sunni and the Shia. And they're the two largest branches. Within there are similar branches. Sufism, Ahmadiyya. I can't even say these good. Can you read them better than I can? Abadism.
Abad Talib.
Yep. But each one of those sects, they got their own distinct beliefs and practices.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Sunni Islam is the largest branch of Islam. You all think across the way. However, Shia is the dominant one in Iran. 90% of their population is Shia. So they were already divided. And so that's why when you start looking at Iran, wait, but why did Iran attack Saudi Arabia? Why did they attack Qatar? Because they too believe that if you don't believe like they believe, you're an imbecile, even if you call yourself a Muslim. Because they came from different branches. One of them has said, well, the Muslim community, they said it holds it, and as Sunni says that Muhammad did not appoint any successor. So his closer companion, Abu Bakr, he succeeded him. Now the Shia are saying Muhammad did appoint Allah Abu Bakr as his successor. So they are very different about who was supposed to succeed the original Muhammad. And that's why they consider each other to be imbeciles against each other. So they're divided. But it's bad that they were divided, but it caused them to be a religion that can fail, a nation that can fall. But so is us. USA is a nation divided. We got divided political parties. We got one that brought in slavery, and we have one that opposed it. We have a civil war that brought the end of it. We have one party that says, well, there's only two agendas, just like God said, male and female. There's another one that said there's over 80 genders. There's one group that believes we should open the border, let anybody in, anybody that wants to. There's another one that says, no, we only got to let in somebody that's a friend or their neighbor. There's one group that believes it's okay to mutilate children for life, attempting them to change their gender. Another one says, you do not harm children. There's one group that says we should abort preborn babies. And another one said, nope, we should let the children live. And that has our nation divided. So please don't think for a moment that we're not vulnerable. How can you tell how your particular place is doing? There's a project in California, statewide project, where they're building a train system. And I put this here because there's a question I'm going to ask at the end. Voters approved of that system. They're supposed to be a train that will connect San Francisco and Los Angeles in 2 hours and 40 minutes. Major thing. August 2025, they spent over $13 billion been spent on that project. $13 billion. You know how much they built so far? From the 2008. We're talking about 2008 is when this thing started. 2025, they might have got a mile. And they spent $13 billion already. And they say by the year 28, they're talking about how much more. The estimated cost to build this San Francisco Bakerville system, they said, well, let's charge it down. Let's bring the mileage down. Maybe won't go as far as we said it would go. is $54 billion. And then the estimate of San Francisco semester is $84 billion. They spent this money. So the question of it is, has your city spent money, millions on projects that's not been finished yet? Because if so, your city is facing a division. It's just common sense. And this nation is in a season of war that has spiritual ramifications. I think we just might do part 2 of this next week.
Amen.
But right now, remember, you do need wisdom. Just common sense. Because what you're dealing with right now in war is just common sense versus the lack of it. Or wisdom versus the lack of it. JCS stands for
Jesus Christ saves.
Just Common Sense, a common sense approach to life with Dr. Johnny Hunter. Get involved and embrace common sense conservative principles when you visit learninc.org. LEARNINC, learninc.org. To listen, like, and share, look for Just Common Sense anywhere you listen to podcasts.